Hi everybody, thanks for joining me. I'm Nick from Creation Army TV, and today we're going to be doing another exciting After Effects tutorial. This one's pretty simple, and it'll allow you to make some beautiful cartoon fire, just like the fire you're looking at here. Doesn't matter what version of After Effects you're using. We're not going to be getting into any third-party plugins. This is all native After Effects that you're looking at right here. So, let's learn how to make this easy cartoon fire. We're also going to delve into a couple of simple expressions, so if you've never done expressions before, maybe today you can learn how to start on some of those. So in After Effects, let's look at some fire. Now, what do we know about fire, cartoon fire especially? We know that it's anchored at the bottom, whatever object is on fire, usually the wood here in this picture. That's where the fire is anchored, and then as it goes up near the top, the fire starts to wave, and the flames start to sort of wave back and forth, and they lick the air, and they move independently from one another. So my mouse is on this lick right here, but the one directly to the right would whip and wave around independently from the other one. Looking back at our animation, you can see what I'm talking about here. We've got these bright red or bright orange flame licks that move independently from each other. So the illusion here is that all this red is one big piece, when in reality it's probably 5 flame licks put together. Here's how to construct that. I'll take this image and just use it as my guide, and I'll just move it over here to the side for now. I'm going to pause this. I'll just move this over here to the side and made it a guide layer so it won't appear in my final animation. So let's build one of these flame licks. What I'm going to do is look at this very center one, and I'm going to realize that it's sharp at the top and probably rounded near the bottom. I'm sort of imagining that if it was standing on its own, what would it look like? And it would look a little bit like a circle. I'm going to pull out the pen tool by hitting G, and I'm going to make the top of the shape first. So here's the top of the flame lick, and then as it gets down near the bottom, it would look, I'm holding space to move the anchor point before I've let go of my click. It would probably look a little bit like this. It would be rounded, and it'll come back up just like this, up to the very top again. And I'm going to get this sharp cone shaped object, and this will be one of my flame licks. Alright, so once I have that made, by the way, if it's not the right color, just click here on fill, and then you can use your eyedropper and select a color from. But if you have a guide image like I do, you can choose a red here, or you can use the color picker and pick any color you want. So how do we make this move and whip around? I'm going to name it Flame Lick. I like to name my layers always so I know what they are, and I'll color code it red. How do we start to whip this thing around? Well, let's use an effect built into After Effects. In my effects and presets here in the search bar, I'm going to type wave, and we're going to use an effect called wave warp. If you want to find it in the menu, it's under effect, distort, wave warp, all the way down at the bottom. So I'll use wave warp, double click, and now it's applied to the layer. You can see down here at the bottom it's become gooey, and there's a little bit of distortion on the sides. And as I go through time, you see this sort of weird thing happening. So what's happening here is that the wave warp effect is using a sine curve with a wave height of 10 and a wave width of 40, and its direction is 90 degrees. What does all that gobbledygook mean? It means that it is applying this wavy distortion in a vertical fashion. So this is actually distorted vertically. If I give this a spin right now, 90 degrees, you can see the distortion is up and down, just like the ocean's waves. I'm going to undo that. So that's where the 90-degree direction comes in. I'm going to give this a spin back to the 0 position so that my distortion is now side to side. And when we go back up here to wave height, you can see that the height is actually the sort of amplitude or the amount of distortion. So I'll leave that, maybe at 15. But really, the most important number to change here is your wave width. That's your frequency, or how many curves you have. If we look back at our guide image, you can see that our flame up here probably has 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 to 4 turns in it. So I'm going to bring my wave height up. You actually increase this number to give you a smaller amount of turns. So now this is looking a little bit more like our cartoon fire in terms of wave distortion. A couple things to note here. As you scroll through time, you'll notice that this animates automatically. I haven't laid any keyframes, and this is waving by itself. That's because wave speed is set to 1. If you change this to any number, it will increase the speed. So anyway, I'm keeping that at 1, so it's good to know. Also, I mentioned before that the flame licks are probably anchored at the bottom to the thing that is on fire. So if we look at our flame here and we scroll through time, you can see that the bottom is moving around. And I don't want that. I need it to be anchored. So we'll come up here to the pinning tab, and I'm going to pin the bottom edge. That means that the bottom won't be distorted by waving, but everything else above it will. So just like a real flame, or a real cartoon flame anyway. So we're almost ready to pre-compose this flame. So the next thing that I like to do when I'm making cartoon fire is I like to add a little bit of waving in the wind. Not only should this flame be licking back and forth with this wave distortion, but it should probably also lean to the side, to the left, and to the right, kind of like a slow-moving metronome, and that'll add a little bit more of this nice randomosity that you get with flames. So to do that, you need to do a couple of things. If I hit W on my keyboard, or R to bring up the rotation, you'll see that the flame just rotates on the anchor point, which is located right here. If you hit Y on the keyboard, you can click and drag and move this anchor point down to the bottom. If you hold Command or Control, by the way, it'll snap to the bottom center. If I rotate the flame now, it'll rotate along, or it'll hinge along that anchor point on the bottom. And that's what I want it to do through time. Do you want to lay keyframes, let's say at the beginning, maybe -4 degrees, keyframe, etc., etc., 10 frames away? Do I want to go 4 so that it moves? And then do I want to copy, paste, paste, paste? So now I have like a waving, leaning, oscillating flame. No, I don't want to lay all those keyframes. I want a simple expression that will take care of the rocking motion for me. I'll return this to 0. So how do we do that? Well, we can use this handy expression. I have sort of my cheat sheet here. This is your simple oscillating or rocking expression. This is essential for making your artwork oscillate or move back and forth, or make any value move back and forth through time with no keyframes whatsoever. Math.sine, parentheses, time times 2, parentheses, times 3. What does this all mean? This is a simple equation or an expression that will produce a sine curve that oscillates up and down, and it will multiply the value of time as we go through time. The value of time slowly increases. It'll multiply that by 2, and then it'll multiply everything by 3. And what do I mean by that? What we need to think about here is, first, the speed of oscillation. So if you change this number 2 to anything like 10 or 15, your speed of oscillation, or your back and forth movement, is going to be faster. If you bring this number down to maybe 1 or even 0.5, then you'll be going slower and slower as you approach 0. If we move ahead, the last number, times 3, is going to be our angle of rotation. So if you only want your object to rotate 3 degrees, then you would type a 3. If you want it to rotate 90 degrees, you would type a 90 right here. So I'll give you an example of that. I'll scrub through time a little bit more. I have an example triangle down here, and I've moved the anchor point to the bottom. It doesn't have the expression on it yet. But if I take all of this expression and copy it, I'm going to go back to my triangle. I'm going to hold Alt or Option on the keyboard, and I'll click the stopwatch to enter an expression, and I'll just paste the expression in here. Again, that's math with a capital M dot sin, all lowercase, parentheses, time times 2 times 3. And I'll hit enter. So here's what's going to happen with that triangle. You can just barely see that it's rocking back and forth as I go through time. And this is very convenient because I have not laid any keyframes. This saves you a lot of work. It just continually rocks through time, oscillates through time, and you can stretch this layer 10 minutes, 10 hours, it doesn't matter how long it is. It will just keep doing that. So that's cool, but I mean, that's only rocking 3 degrees. You can see here, these red numbers represent the amount of rotation, and you'll see that it tops out at 3. But I want this to rotate 40 degrees, so I'll change the angle number, which is right here, this last number, to 40, and I'll hit enter. Now my triangle rotates 40 degrees, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, forever. And if it's moving a little too fast for me, again, I can lower this number to maybe 1.2. This is my speed number. And so now it'll rotate a little bit slower. Let's get a RAM preview of that. So it's rotating on its own, and of course it's snapping back and forth because my time area is very small. There we go. Now the rotation of my triangle is just being driven by math and time. And that's what I want to do with my flame lick. If we go back to our fire scene on my flame lick layer, I'm going to Alt or Option click rotation, and I'm going to paste in the expression. And I'm going to increase the speed to maybe 3. And I'll increase the angle to maybe 4 degrees. So now as we go through time, this is rocking back and forth. Pull this down a third so it renders a little faster. Now it's rocking back and forth 4 degrees through time without me having to keyframe anything. So that's pretty good. I like the way that my single flame lick looks, and so I'm going to name it number 1, and I'm going to duplicate the layer. So now I have flame lick 2, which is exactly the same, but we don't want it to be exactly the same. I want it to be this second flame lick, like if I point at the image here, I want it to be maybe a little bit shorter and move to the left. So I can actually just kind of scale it down, move it to the left a little bit. And now we have 2 flame licks. The problem that you might see now is that they are identical, and identical is good as far as effects go. I don't want to keep changing the effect. But as far as flames go, that's not realistic. No 2 flames are ever alike, just like no 2 clouds or no 2 lightning bolts are ever the same. You do want a little bit of randomness in your flames. So a common solution is just to take the flame lick layer and move it backwards in time so that the oscillation of the wave warp is a little bit different. Now they're a little bit different, just like that, but they are still rocking back and forth the same exact amount. In other words, my expression for rocking, by the way, you can bring up your expression by double tapping E really fast on the keyboard. EE will show you every expression you have on a layer. You can see that they share the same expression to make them rock through time, and no matter where you move this top layer in time, you may change the wave warp amount, but not the actual amount of rotation. They'll always have the same number here because this math is driven by time. So you can come in here to the expression on flame lick number 2, and you can just change the speed to 2, or you can change the angle to maybe 3.5. You can add your own randomness. So now they are rotating at a different speed and a different amount as well. So that's a good, easy solution. Slide it a little bit in time, and then change the expression with just a couple of just randomly chosen values. Now I'll make a third. In this picture, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 flame licks. So I'm going to make maybe 5 of them. I'm going to take this one, and I will make this even smaller. And you can see that it's basically completely sort of disappearing behind flame lick number 2. I'm going to change the angle again to maybe 4.2 and the speed to 2.5. And it's slightly different. Here's another nice tweak that you can do to your expression. Right now, on my rotation, I can't change this number. If I change it to 200, it doesn't matter. As soon as I let go, it snaps back to whatever the value was determined by the expression. So I can't actually change this or put any keyframes on it, but I want to change it because I want this flame to be showing here in this blank area. So how can I do that? I can come into my expression. You can do this with almost any expression. And I'm going to put one little piece of code at the beginning so that I can change this number, but the expression will still apply. And to do that, I'll just type at the very beginning, I'll put my cursor right before the capital M in math, and I'll type VALUE plus. So that's value plus this expression. And when I hit enter on the number pad, now you might see some crazy amount down here. And of course this is rotated 96 degrees because I just a minute ago rotated this value by 96. But now that we have this value in here, now I can rotate it to whatever I want, like -11, and that would be my value. And then after that, the expression is going to take care of the oscillation with the math.sine expression. So there you go. Now I'm going to make flame lick number 4, which I'm going to move over to this side. I'll make a little bit taller, and I'll use W to rotate it to here. Now I have full control over all, well, 2 of my flame licks, but they're still nice and random. I'm going to move it forward in time a little bit. They're still moving back and forth nice and randomly, and they're oscillating with wave warp randomly, or what seems like randomness. I'll take flame lick number 4 and duplicate that. That's Command D or Control D on the keyboard, and I'll rotate it a little bit more, and I'll make it a little bit shorter, just like this flame lick on the far right side of the guide image. Move this way out over here, rotate it a little bit more. There we go, and now we have 5 red flame licks that, forgive me, they tend to, my computer isn't keeping up with the redraw. Let's do a RAM preview of this, and we can see, even while it RAM previews, that we have some nice flame licks that are going back and forth and oscillating randomly. So we're getting there. We're getting closer to my simulation of cartoon fire. So what I like to do now is take all of these flame licks and pre-compose them together. And I'll call this red flames. And I'll move all of the attributes into a new composition. There we go, red flames. I'll color code this red. And they exist together inside of that pre-comp. Now I need to make this yellow flame. I'm going to find red flames in my project panel, and I'll duplicate the entire composition here with Command D. And I'm going to name this one yellow flames. And I'll color code this one yellow. I like color coding things. I'll double click into the yellow flames, and of course we don't have yellow flames yet. I'm going to take away 2 of the flame licks. I only want to keep maybe this tall one. And of course I want to change the fill color to something orange yellow, like that. I'm going to copy that number and apply it to my other flames. You could also do this with an adjustment layer for fill if you wanted to. So I'll take flame lick 1, make it a little shorter. Take flame lick number 2, make it a little bit shorter. And remember, it didn't have that handy value plus at the beginning of it. So now I can control its initial rotation this way. And I'll move flame lick 3 to the other side and rotate it to the other side a little bit like this. And I'll also slide the layer in time so it's a little different from the others. I'll double check my expression by hitting double E on every layer and make sure that the numbers are basically different for every layer, and they are. So now I've got my nice yellow flame licks, which are going to exist on the inside of the bonfire. You can move them together if you want to, make them a little shorter. I'll leave the fine tuning up to you. And so now this whole thing is moving back and forth. I'm going to change the rotation angle, I'm sorry, not the angle, but the speed on this left flame lick to that amount. Oh, I'm sorry, I broke the expression. And I did that because I deleted the asterisk, which is the multiplication symbol, times 1.5. There we go. Don't want to break your expressions. There we go. Now I have my yellow flames. Let's go back to our fire scene and let's bring in the yellow flames comp. There we go. And I'm going to move the anchor point down here. I'll scale my yellow flames down a little bit. There you go. I'm going to move my yellow flames backward in time a little bit. And it's probably not a good idea to, see your yellow flames coming out into the black space. So it is a good idea to shrink it down. There we go. And of course, you can add a little bit of glow. I'm going to make an adjustment layer with Command Option Y. I don't know, I guess on a PC that would be Control Alt Y. And this adjustment layer is going to be our glow. So I'll look for glow in the effects panel. And of course that's applying to the guide image as well. And let's change our threshold and our amount. So I won't get too much into glow, but the glow effect on an adjustment layer is going to give you this nice flamey glow around everything. I'll leave it to you to fine tune that. But here we are with our cartoon fire. Now it's looking okay at this point, but we want to add that little extra amount of distortion. If you look at my final animation here, you can see that there's extra distortion, side-to-side distortion happening on all of the flames, and it seems to be a little bit more random. I did that with an effect called Displacement Map. When you use Displacement Map on red flames, you first have to give it a target layer. So let's create our target layer. I'm going to hit Command Y or Control Y to create a new solid, and I'll just call this fractal. Doesn't matter what color you make it. And from the effects panel, I'm going to choose fractal noise. So just type fractal and you'll see fractal noise here. Don't use fractal, use fractal noise. I'll double click it and we get this weird black and white map. I'll change this to dynamic progressive, soft linear to spline. And I want a little bit more contrast. I want low complexity. I'll put that to 2. So it gives us this very soft map. And under the transform panel, I will increase the scale to something like this. Here's another handy expression. Under the evolution tab, you'll see that you have this rotation value, and you can see the fractal noise evolving like this. That's the kind of evolution that we want. But I don't want to set any keyframes for that. So I'm going to use another handy expression. I'm going to option click on the stopwatch, and I'll just type time times 200. So what that'll do is it'll give me a value every frame that I go through. Let's say I'm at the 1 second mark. That's going to be 1 times 200. If I go to the 2 second mark, that's going to be 2 times 200, and you can see here that that's 300, and that's actually 400 degrees, 360 plus 40. So every second of time is going to be 1 and 2 and 3, etc. So this is going to actually evolve on its own at this speed. I'll do a little RAM preview. So this nice expression is giving us some evolution of this. But we also need like an up and down movement, and you can do that with a throw expression. So let's talk about a simple throw expression. A throw expression is just going to give us constant movement, again, without setting any keyframes. And what I want to apply that to is the offset turbulence value of the fractal. If you'll notice here that you have a little target and you have your x value and your y value. I'll move the x value and we can see that it moves side to side. I don't want side to side movement, I want up and down movement. So if you change this value, the fractal is going to move up and down. That's what I want. So let's talk about this throw expression. I learned this one a couple of years ago, and it's really handy just for constant movement. So your simple throw expression is written this way. This is constant x or y movement through time. You've got your x position, and I just like to write x pose. You can write anything you want. This is setting a variable. Our variable is x pose, and that's going to equal, in this case, 500. The reason I set 500 is because our comp, if I hit Command K, is 1000 pixels, and the very center of that is 500. Now our x value doesn't matter. We're not going to move the fractal left or right, so I'll just leave that at a constant 500. It's the y position that I want to move, so I'll write y pose equals, and then I'll use time, and I'll do times negative 400. So every second that goes by, the fractal is going to move up 400 pixels. Okay, and then of course I'm going to write a semicolon. All right, the 400 is our speed. Time drives the speed, but this actually shouldn't say speed. This is actually pixels movement. So again, our fractal is going to be moving up 400 pixels per second. Okay, so this is more accurate. All you need to worry about is this simple expression right here. And then what's in your square brackets right here is, of course, your final output. This is what this expression is going to output to your x and y values of your fractal's position or transform. So I'm going to take this whole expression and I'll copy it. I'll come back to my fire scene, and I'm going to option click on offset turbulence, and our expression is here, and I'll paste it in. So I'll hit enter. Now, over time, the fractal moves up 400 pixels per second by itself, constantly, no keyframes. There you go, it's great. I'll fold this up. Now, why did I make this cloud of black and white? Who knows? Who knows what it is? Let's add a little bit more contrast and bring the brightness down. We need this fractal. I'm going to put it below red flames. We need this fractal to drive the extra distortion seen in our original flame animation. And that extra distortion is what I'm talking about, like right here where my mouse is. You can see this little bulge, and where this flame curls over on itself here. This is the kind of extra distortion that we don't get with wave distortion by itself. So we're going to have to use the fractal map to displace our red and yellow flames. Now, here's an important part of this. You do have to take this fractal map and pre-compose it. So I'll choose it in the layers panel here, and I'll hit Command Shift C, or I believe Control Shift C on a PC. And this will be our fractal comp. I'm going to move all the attributes, and I won't open it. I'll just hit OK. At this point, you can just hide your fractal layer. We don't need to see it anymore. But from choosing the red flames layer, from the Effects and Presets panel, I'm going to type Displace, and I'll choose Displacement Map, and I'll apply that to the red flames layer. Right away, it's going to, by default, choose itself as our displacement map layer. But our displacement map layer has to be this fractal comp, which is hidden. So what happened here? If I turn this effect on and off, you can see a little bit of change. We actually need a lot more change than that. Our horizontal displacement, if I increase that value, you can see that increasing. Our vertical, I don't want to change the vertical too much, and I'm going to change both of these pull downs to luminance instead of red and green. So what that refers to, luminance, is the black and white values of my fractal comp, which I just made. And everywhere where we have white pixels, that's going to distort the red flames left or right. And everywhere we have black pixels will be in the opposite direction. Same goes for up and down. I'm going to hide that again. So now with my red flames selected, I'm going to just increase that number. And I'm going to copy this effect and also apply it to my yellow flames. There we go. So now they have that extra amount of distortion left and right. I'll change this to 1/3 and RAM preview. And once the RAM preview is done, now we're going to see some flames that are moving independently. The flame licks themselves are moving independently, and now we have that extra little bit of distortion from the fractal displacement map, and that distortion moves upward and it evolves over time by itself. So now we can see that we've made this nice cartoon fire with basically no keyframes, driven by only a few expressions. And it's nice and random, and it looks somewhat believable. And you can do this with any version of After Effects and not have to use any third-party plugins. So thanks for joining me on this quick tutorial to make cartoon fire. I hope that your cartoon fire turns out just as good, and I hope you learned something, especially about these important expressions, math.sine, and the simple throw expression. These can be lifesavers if you just want constant motion in your cartoon animations. I'm Nick with Creation Army TV. We'll see you next time.